those of you who don't know me, my name is Emma. I'm a doctor of chiropractic and I've been practicing here in Whyalla for the last couple of years. It is a pleasure to be here tonight. Tonight the topic of conversation is periods and poops, which is very relevant because we've got a room full of women and a room full of bowels. So here we are. So I want to start, if that's okay, by taking you on a journey. So we're going to go back in time. So we're going to start by removing the industrial era. So the industrial era, which brought us all of the things that happen really quickly in our world, but also brought us into this fast-paced world that we live in. We're also going to go back in some cultures where before the agricultural era, so before we started growing in mass big crops, to a time where we as women and as cultures actually came together when we had our periods. So when we bled, there were cultures within the world that actually came together. And these women, when they came together, they actually stopped. So they stopped their work, they stopped all of the rushing around, they stopped gathering, the men continued to do their hunting, and they came together in a ritual that happened every month. And so this monthly cycle was in line with the moon. And so it's no coincidence that the moon cycle is 28 days and our natural cycle is 28 days. And so when we start to look at how things historically lined up before we had all the flashing lights, before we had all of the craziness in this world where everything is designed to happen yesterday, we had time where we were actually in tune with Mother Nature. And when we came together in this period, when we were menstruating, what actually happened was a really nourishing experience for all of the women. When young girls came into this time and space, they learnt about fertility. They learnt about their cycle. They learnt about the fact that their bodies are naturally designed to go through periods of wax and wane, where emotions come up and down, where we have abundance of energy and then we don't. And when women came together and they were entered into motherhood, mums would get to stop. They'd actually get to slow down. They'd get to come and gather in community with their other women, and they would get to nourish themselves and ask themselves, what do I need? What do I need so for the rest of the month I can go out and be the best mother that I can be? And then there were the elders that were a part of the group. So the elders, they were the ones that had gone through the experience. They'd gone through the roads, they'd gone through the ups and downs, and they were the ones that were able to give all of the young girls and the mothers advice. And this coming together was known as Red Tent. Historically, it's something that is seen in many, many cultures. In our world, there's a lot of communities of women that are actually beginning to come together around the moon time. When we would come together with our bleed, it would always be with the dark moon, which is also known as the new moon. So when we're in touch with Mother Nature, we're in touch with our cycles syncing to the new moon. When we have our ovulation point, that's actually the full moon. And so if you've spoken to any police officers, any staff at the hospitals, any normal person that actually keeps track of the full moon, you'll know that we can get a little bit full on around the full moon. And it's not that people get more crazy, it's just that wherever they are, it's amplified. And so with this, there is a whole big ebb and flow that we'll start to have a big deep dive into. And so when women would come together, they would not only just support each other, but they'd do practices like Tai Chi and Qigong and chanting. They would come together and they'd acknowledge each other. And as they went through this process of aging, it was actually celebrated. So becoming a woman who was past her period actually was a celebrated time as opposed to I'm going through menopause. It was a positive thing. And so it was something that as a young girl, getting their first period was an extremely different experience to, I'm sure, what possibly you went through, definitely what I went through. Often when we have our first period, well, our mum does our best, or does their best, and they say, well, this is what's going to happen. Each month you're going to bleed. When you bleed, there are pads, there are tampons. You're probably going to get about 500 of them over your lifetime. And sometimes they're shitty. Sometimes you get headaches. Often you get pain. But don't worry, because there's painkillers for that. And don't worry, we might be able to pop you on some birth control to help manage those things. And so this is our culture in this day and age. We are indoctrinated into this idea that instead of celebrating periods, it's just something that we have to get through. And sometimes it's not very nice. And often periods can be explained as yuck. It can have that connotation. And so I want you to imagine if your life had been a little bit different. I'm just going to move us down. So this is a red tent experience that's happening in this culture. This is a young girl coming into her indoctrination into womanhood. So finally the day arrives and you receive your initiation into womanhood. Your lunar blood and your mother excitedly shares the news with women who have prepared for your menarche ceremony and your first visit to the red tent. You pack your overnight bag and walk with your mother through the folds of the heavy fabric that have long been forbidden. Inside, there are carpets and cushions, reclining lounges, peacock feathers, platters of food, incense, candles, and all the women you know and love and who have helped rear you are smiling and clapping and crying as they embrace you and welcome you into the red tent. The ceremony of the high priestess anoints you on the forehead with some sacred oil and blesses and bids you to take your place. The ceremony lasts 3 days, 1 day for maiden, 1 day for the mother, and 1 day for the crone. This marks the beginning of your sacred study, learning to use your feminine gifts to the good of the clan, learning what it's like to be a woman. Isn't that beautiful? Fast forward to today. As I said, where periods are something that we just have to get through. Everything is due yesterday. We're not only encouraged to create these careers, but we're encouraged to go above and beyond. Then we come home and then we have to be the mothers. We have to cook the nutritious meals for us and for our family. We have to get up early and exercise. We feel guilty if we snooze the alarm and don't. Where is this guilt coming from? It's in here, but is it really in here, or is it something that is more of an outward expression? We carry the tears of our children on our shoulders. We carry the worries of our family and friends. PMS and low back pain when period comes is a normal part of life. Hormone-related diseases like PCOS, endometriosis, menopausal symptoms are household names. They're really common. But instead of stopping this craziness of go, 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 and actually saying, hey, why are we having this? Why has this become something that is so outwardly different to what our grandmothers had some time ago? We keep on going, and so we take the pills for the low back pain, and it's something that is time to start reconnecting to. And so there'll be a couple of things that I want you to leave with tonight. One of them is knowing your lady parts, and so I'll get straight to that. Now I know that all of you know generally what your lady parts are, but we're going to get started and have a little bit of a look. So our hormonal system is made up not actually just of our ovaries, our uterus, and the vagina. It's actually made up of the whole kit and caboodle of our body. So we have 2 glands within our brain, our hypothalamus and our pituitary, which are part of our hormonal system. We have our thyroid, which is part of our hormonal system, which sits here. We have our pancreas, which many of you might know deals with the way that our body regulates sugar. It also has a huge amount to do with our periods. We have our adrenal glands, which sit on top of our kidneys. The adrenal glands are the ones you might have heard of adrenaline before. That's that go, 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 go hormone, the one that just keeps us on. And often when our adrenals are high, our sex hormones are low. And so these hormones that enable us to go through this ebb and flow and this wax and wane, if you're really overstimulated, we're not going to go through our natural cycles. And so the super cool thing about all of this hormonal system is without you even thinking about it, it's going on behind the scenes. And so if it gets cold outside, or if it gets hot outside because it's Whyalla, what will happen is your hypothalamus will send a message to the pituitary, and then the next minute the thyroid has regulated the way that you're feeling with your temperature, and no longer you're cold or no longer you're hot. And you don't even have to think about that process. How cool is that? Behind the scenes, all of these systems are regulating, and we don't even have to think about it. Now, when it comes to our sex hormones, what we're talking about are the ones that are stimulated and help ovulation and help menstruation. And when it comes to our period, we tend to think of two things. And so there are two things that we go into. We either do want to get pregnant or we don't want to get pregnant. And this is how we think about our periods. We either want to avoid ovulation or we want to get in there and do the damn thing when ovulation happens. And so ovulation is probably the most famous, probably the most infamous is our periods. And this is two parts of a four-part story. So there are actually four parts of the cycle. And today what we're going to do is we're going to learn about these four parts. And we're going to learn about them in relationship to the season. Because over a month cycle, what we actually know is that these different hormonal secretions within the body actually change the way that our brain works. And so when our brain changes in accordance to the changes in the hormone, we actually become a different person. And so over the month, we are four different people, depending on where you are in the cycle, which is kind of cool. Everyone's having a bit of giggle going, oh yeah, So what we're doing when we're going through these cycles is going through our natural ebb and flow and wax and wane. Now if you're somebody, as we go through these, who actually doesn't get their period, whether it be because you're nursing, whether it be because you live a really high stress life and your body hasn't had the adrenal shutdown so the sex hormones can kick over, whether you're someone who's gone through menopause, or whether you are somebody who is on the pill or on birth control that actually stop or slow down the process of your bleed. What I want you to do is actually think about your cycles in terms of the moon. So if you're someone that's trying to get their period and can't quite, what we're going to do as we go through these cycles is the new moon is where you would normally bleed and the full moon is where you would ovulate. So the full moon is the time to get out and get dirty. So just like our ocean makes up 70% of the earth, the water within our system actually makes up 70% of our body. So the moon's ability to change the tides has the same, or is the same ability that actually syncs us up as women. Now you might be going, oh, but I don't take any birth control, but I'm not in line with the moon. Often in this day and age, because of the extra lights, cameras and action, and because we live together as women who are not all synced together to the moon, sometimes we sync together as a family, and that family unit will sync. And that's more of a powerful pull when you're spending lots of time with women And you all know if you've lived in a house full of women, eventually the periods come together, right? Okay. So, the first week we're going to start with is our week of winter. So this is our bleed phase. This is when everything that we would normally do in the outward world is required to stop and shut down. This is the lowest point of your cycle, and it's time to go inside. It's time to get out the journal and start journaling. It's time to give yourself a moment, and I know that in this day and age we can't go to a red tent and spend 7 days because we all know that our husbands and partners and families would fall apart without us. But what we can do is take a bath. What we can do is go to the beach and just stare at the ocean. Give yourself some time. During this period, what actually happens is the cervix becomes quite firm. So just to give you a bit of anatomy lesson, the vagina sits on the outside of the body, but also it has a canal. So the canal is part of the vagina, and that's where the baby comes out, that's where the period blood comes out, that's when the penis goes in. And when it's time, the blood will come down through the cavity. Now I just want to touch really quickly here on tampons. Tampons are something that actually block the ability for our body to go through this full flow. And so when we're not actually emptying out entirely, the body actually creates more toxins within the system. Tampons are something that cause a positive ion shift. Now what that means, positive ions are the things that EMF give off. So if you've heard about the overabundance of EMF radiation within our system, within our world, it's positive ions that are the bad thing that we're surrounded by. And the same thing happens when we actually stop the natural flow of what's happening or what's coming out. There have been lots of very quiet lawsuits that happen with, and there has actually been one recently where tampons are coated with things to make us bleed more, which requires us to use more tampons. And so that is something that needs to be common knowledge. And so there are so many other options out there that we can use. And so I actually got Emma from the Green Economy to come down and show you some reusable options, the cups and some reusable pads, which are absolutely incredible and really environmentally friendly. So your cervix is firmer, your hormones are all at a really low level, and it's something, this time what you want to be doing is cancelling your plans, or better yet, don't make plans. This is the time to yourself. Go to bed an hour earlier than normal. This is your winter. Now, after your winter, what we head into is our spring phase, and this is our follicular phase. So this is phase number 2. This is the one that we don't hear often about, and the follicular phase is when your egg is actually released and it begins to ripen within your cervix. So during this time, cervical mucus will become a little bit wetter, and you'll notice that it's a lot more creamy in consistency. And so I'm telling you these intricacies of vaginal discharge because it's important when we start to track our system if we want to get pregnant or if we want to avoid pregnancy. And so both estrogen and testosterone is our strength hormone, actually boosts in this time, and so our brain skills are on point. We start to feel more confident and powerful in these first, so period 3 to 7 days. Follicular phase is 7 days to 13, 14 days. Estrogen within our system actually suppresses our appetite. So you'll feel lighter, you'll feel more abundant, you'll have more energy within this time. And so it's the time to start new projects. So within your follicular phase, and start to have a think about where you are within your cycle and see if you can track this. So great time to brainstorm, great time to start problem solving. It's a good time to speak up at your meetings. be social, plan play dates with the kids, and this is where the body is actually able to handle more strenuous exercise. When we're going through our period, we want to do yoga, we want to walk, we want to take a bath. When we're in our follicular phase, we actually can handle a bit more. And you'll note that because you're not as hungry and you've got more get up and go. Now, the follicular phase is where your egg is starting to ripen. The next phase, which lasts 2 to 3 days, is our summer phase. This is where we ovulate. So ovulation phase lasts about 2 to 3 days. So that means you can only get pregnant for 2 to 3 days out of the month. Now, there is a window either side of that where the little spermies can live a little bit longer, but our egg will only be right for that period of time. Now, keep in mind that if your cycle isn't synced up or your cycle hasn't gone through its detox phase, which we'll talk about, there are times where we can get random eggs just floating around. And so what we want to do is go through our detox phase, which I'll chat about, and so we can know that when we are ovulating, it is the time that we need to be when we're looking at avoiding pregnancy. So the eggs tend to survive 12 to 24 hours, and basically they'll be fertilized or they'll die. And so the coolest thing about this period is if you are trying to get pregnant, what will happen is the mucus will become more egg whitey. So I don't know if you've ever seen anyone do this and when they're describing discharge, but this is the ovulation phase. This is the time, and if we look microscopically at these egg white secretions, they actually have channels in them, and those channels allow the sperm to move faster up through the vagina, up into the cervix and into the uterus. Now the sperm has such a hard time because the vagina is actually really, really acidic, and it's designed to be really acidic so only the super strong sperm gets through. Now by the time they get to the egg, if I'm the sperm and I've just gone on this treacherous journey and I get to the egg would be about 2 to 3 times this room. So it is a huge, big deal, and this little sperm has no ability to really get in there. It's got to be the egg that opens up, and it's just the one little guy that can get in. And when he gets in, it's almost like this little arm that comes out of the egg and pulls the sperm in. So there's got to be such a beautiful succession of events to happen to get pregnant. And it's not easy. It's not something that just happens, although for some women you'll be like, oh, hang on, I'm 5 kids deep, it did just happen for me. Everybody's different, but it's just an incredible process because it's not something that is an easy feat, albeit a natural feat. So when we're looking at our ovulation phase, this is our super phase. This is where we're just the woman, the creatress, the hey, I can do anything at any time. We have a heightened sense of vision, a heightened sense of smell. We'll have a great ability to be able to verbalize things. Our sexual prowess is on point. Our seductress comes out. This is where you'll be thinking about your partner all day. And then you get home and he goes, yep, and you go, yep. This is actually a time where you feel more attractive and your skin will smoothen. So when your skin smooths, it's actually a sign from your body to say, hey, I'm really ready. And when you ovulate, really cool thing. So ovulation doesn't just happen to the feelings inside of you. It actually changes our pheromones. So just like dogs go on heat and other dogs can smell it, they can smell it too. Our men can smell when we're ovulating. And they've done studies over in America in the tipping culture. So when we go to a cafe over there or a restaurant, we would tip our waiter or waitress. And different here, we just pay them, well, their employee pays them their wage and we get our food. Depending on their service over there depends on how much they get tipped. Women who are ovulating have reported a 30% increase in their tips in their ovulation phase. So it's not just what's going on inside of us, there's a huge external change where people are actually noticing. And so it's the time to go for job interviews, it's the time to ask for a raise, it's the time to go to networking events, to make plans for the future. It's also a really good time to schedule public speaking events. What phase do you think I'm in? And so this is where we can really start to work with our bodies and set up the 2 weeks post period so you are designed to be outward, to get out there and get what you want, and then once you finish ovulation and you start to go into more of that waxing side, or that waning side of the moon, this is where you start to go, hey, I don't need to go out and do all those different things out there in the big wide world, I'm going to come in. And so this is our luteal phase. So the next phase is our autumn phase, and this typically lasts about 14 days. So the cervical mucus loses its egg white consistency and starts to become more thick. So it's like, hey sperm, we don't want anything to do with you, you stay away. And so the hormones at this point are starting to prepare you for pregnancy. And during this half of your cycle or your luteal phase, you'll still be riding some high from the ovulation. And so the first couple of days of ovulation, you still might have that get up and go. However, your progesterone is increasing. Now, progesterone is the thing that starts to wind you down. Progesterone can be likened to Valium. You take a Valium, you don't want to go out. You just want to be in. And this is what progesterone does. And so this is the time to start really going inwards. The cravings will come here, your PMS comes. You really want to start eating nourishing foods. Take a yoga class, go to bed early, read your favourite book, get massages. This is the time really to give yourself some TLC. Don't schedule waxing, dentists, anything that's going to cause you pain in this other side of your cycle, because it will actually hurt more. When your estrogen is high, it's like a natural painkiller, it's like that opioid, whereas your progesterone is like the Valium. And so you'll still feel it, but it will just be a little bit more taxing for the body. And so as much as this is a bit of a cycle, that autumn, the leaves are falling, it still is part of the cycle to be celebrated. And once we understand our bodies more, instead of loathing the process, we can start to schedule around it. And we can really make an amazing experience of womanhood. So, they are our 4 cycles. And so how does birth control affect the 4 different cycles within our normal menstrual month? Well, they have a synthetic dominance, and what that means is they downregulate or they stop our normal period process from happening, because there are bigger, stronger, synthetic man-made hormones that circulate the system. And so their job is to stop us from getting pregnant. And what they'll do is they'll skip the ovulation phase. So when we're on birth control, specifically the pill I'm talking about here, we'll skip the best part of the month. This is the time where we would actually get out there and be the best woman that we could be. So because we're down-regulating our ability to be an outward expressive woman, we miss the good stuff. And also the pill quite literally changes the way the brain works. So our hormones, as we said, we go into these 4 different people that live within our mind throughout the month. The pill will actually do the same thing, except on a greater, and they are more, I don't want to use the word depressive, but the hormones that are secreted when we're on birth control are actually very different to our natural hormones, and it stops our normal regulation. And when we have our sugar pills, what's actually happening is there's a big dose of progesterone. And so your bleed that you would have on the pill is actually a man-made bleed. So you're not actually going through your normal shedding of your uterus. It's a man-made bleed, which is very different to the detoxing mechanism that a period can be from your body. So your period actually is a fifth detox pathway. We'll talk more about detox pathways when we get into poop. But as a woman, we have an extra one. And so when your body is bleeding, what the rest of the system does is goes, oh, you're taking out the trash? Here, take this too, and take this too. But when we have our hormones synthetically dominated, we don't have that ability to go through that detox phase as well as what we could. Being on birth control, whether it be the pill, whether it be the depot or the implanton, what it actually does, let's have a dance break. There we go. It actually changes our smell. And there are some of the studies that I was reading to look at this change in smell actually changes the way that we choose our partners. And so the way that we choose our partners is not only because they look gorgeous, it's not only because they can provide for us, but it's also because of pheromones. You might see a guy who's absolutely gorgeous and then you get a little bit closer to him and it's not a conscious thing, but subconsciously you might go, there's something about him. That's the smell, that's the pheromones. And so when we're on the pill, this changes. And so our smell and our picking of our partner actually has our intuition looking through different eyes. And biologically, we go through this choosing of our partners very much in our reptilian brain. So the reptilian brain is the base part of your brain where we make our fight, flight, survival decisions. And so when women are on the pill, studies have shown they actually choose their partners and they want them, or they will choose partners with more feminine attributes. So more female attributes when women are on the pill versus women who are off the pill choose partners who are more masculine. Very interesting. So when you come off the pill then, you meet your man of your dreams, you decide that you're going to buy a house, you then buy the house, you decide to get married, you decide you want to have a baby, and you go, oh, I'm going to come off the pill. And so you come off the pill. And then all of a sudden, isn't that incredible? This happens. There's actually, it's a very small amount of documentation. I don't know how they actually came up with this study. I didn't read the full kit and caboodle. But divorces actually happen around hormonal changes in women. So whether it be the change of pill, the change of depot, coming off of the pill, going through the change of life, actually can be a part of the separation process. So, you might be going, but I need to be on the pill because I cannot have another baby, or I need to be on the pill because the doctor gave it to me because I have some things going on, and it's regulating it. And without the pill, I get these awful migraines, or without skipping my periods by having the depot injection, I just can't get to work. And so this is something that we'll dive into because, girl, there are so many other options other than synthetic hormone dominance. And the first step is actually to start to track your cycle. And I really struggled to make this a 1 hour lecture. We could have done, in fact, I think I said to Emma, we could have done an hour a week for 6 to 8 weeks to actually go through, and that would have been a topic. How can we create vital, enthusiastic, fertile eggs and uteruses, and also live a life where you don't want to get pregnant? Or make vital, enthusiastic, fertile, eggs and uteruses and actually get pregnant. And so, another time. So let's go back to PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome, the household name for a common problem within the tummy, endometriosis, PMS, menopausal symptoms, sweats. These are all symptoms of the system that is toxic. And I don't say that as in, oh, you've eaten too much McDonald's, you're toxic, although that's an element of it, but that's an element that comes with a myriad of other things. And so when we're talking about polycystic ovarian syndrome, what I'm talking about is a problem where we have irregular periods or no periods at all, where we have difficulty getting pregnant, whether we have excessive hair growth, usually on the face, chest and bottom, where we have weight gain, thinning of hair. This is a phenomenal problem that actually is a huge issue within our society, along with endometriosis, which is painful menstrual cramps. What actually happens is the uterine tissue, so the tissue that creates blood within the uterus when we're going through our cycle, actually grows outside of the uterus. It can go around the bowel, it can grow inside the bowel. It grows within the tummy, and this is a horrible experience each month, because not only are you bleeding from your uterus, women can have blood that comes from all different orifices or holes within their body. And so it can cause pain during or after sex, intestinal pain, incredibly painful bowel movements. And so there are a myriad of things that go on to cause the night sweats that happen with menstruation and all of these problems that we've just talked about. And what I alluded to before was the fact that often it's toxins. And so there are toxins that build up within our system, and it is a long process which can happen over more than your lifetime. So you might have inherited some toxins from your mum, who inherited them from their grandma. And it's not something that you might be super duper and grow your own food in your garden and eat organic and drink heaps of water, and still you're having problems within your system. And so what we really want to do is look at why this has started. So if you imagine a fish, and he's in his river, so we're not going to put him in a bowl, we're going to put him in a river, and he's got his fish wife and they're making fish babies, and this river is flowing and they're super happy and everything's going great. And then all of a sudden this industry decided that this area right where the river is, they really like, so they're going to start building this industry, and all of a sudden they put a dam in, so they stop the flow of the water, and the dam kind of starts to stagnate things a little bit. And this stagnation isn't too bad, life can still go on, they're still making fish babies, and then all of a sudden they start to build this industry, and this industry lets off lots of pollution, it puts stuff into the ocean, might make iron ore, I don't know, could make some steel, I don't know, and all of a sudden this is what the fish are breathing in, this is what the fish are drinking. Then all of a sudden they kind of run out of food supply. So what do? Well, they go down to their local fast food and they get some McDonald's, and then the fish start to get a little bit toxic, and all of a sudden they can't have fish babies anymore, and all of a sudden they start getting things like cancers, and all of a sudden the female fish are having horrible periods, or they're not getting their periods at all. And then so we, as the human race and the medical system, come in and go, I know what to do. Let's give them some birth control to help manage these symptoms. Because what we want to do is stop the fish from having problems with painful periods. They want to stop the fish from going through this process of detoxification, because that's not the overarching concept here. But what happens is when we do take the birth control, is we stop our normal process. And so that might clear up some things for a while. The fish might get their glowing skin back because the pill really helped with that. And the water might clear up for a little bit because all of a sudden the fish aren't pooping as well because we have this thing that we're taking every day that's causing dehydration within our system. And so we stop pooping, so the water clears up. We're all right for a little while. Until we go, oh, I want to start having babies. Or until we go, actually, this is getting a bit cramped and I don't feel that good in here. And so what is the logical thing if we had a flowing river and we don't have a flowing river anymore would be to do? We take ourselves out of the toxic environment. And when we take ourselves out of this toxic environment and we create a new environment for ourselves, not only do we not need the hefty drugs and pharmaceuticals to stop the period pain, to give radiation to cancer, to need all kinds of crazy things for COVID, but we take ourselves out of this crazy environment that is so toxic and we start to heal from the outside in and from the inside out. And so what I'm getting at here is that it's not just about this problem. It's so much bigger than that. Our systems are so toxic and we're not moving our bowels as well, we're not weeing as much as we should be, we're not breathing deeply, our skin isn't sweating, we're congested, and so our detox pathways are so changed compared to what our grandmothers' were. And this is the problem that we're facing on an epidemic level. It is huge within our Western culture. And so what we can then do is start looking at our detox pathways. So if we can't change our external environment, what can we do internally so we can really start to see some changes within our systems? And you know, you might be a fish that's getting their period, they're not too affected by the external environment. You've had a baby and things are pretty good. Sometimes you get some headaches. What I want to say is that period pain is not normal. It's common, but it's not normal. It's not something that our body should go through. And the process of pain is a message from the body to say that something's not right. And that something is that we need to start tapping in and listening. So when we have a look at our different detox pathways, I kind of alluded to them. We have our 4 different detox pathways, so our bowel, which we use to poop, our lungs, which we use to breathe, our bladder, which we wee, and our skin, which we sweat. And if any of these systems aren't working well, what tends to happen is our body will actually go through a process where we build a toxic environment. And so this toxic environment within our system can present as endo or PCOS or all kinds of different problems within our body. So what we're going to do is look at how we can change our internal environment. Now, if you know me, if you've come to any of my lectures before, my most favourite thing to talk about is poop. And so, does anybody know how often we are meant to poop? 3 times a day. Do we have any proud 3 poopers here? All right. So our digestive systems are just like a pipe. So as we put food in one end, it's basic science that something will come out the other end. And so if you're putting something in, and if you think about a juicer, for example, or if you think about anything where you put some water at the top of a pipe, what do you want to come out? Water at the bottom of a pipe. If you put some food in the top of a pipe, what do you want to come out at the bottom of the pipe? Digested food. And so our systems are literally just a pipe. So if you're not pooping after each time you're having a meal, you are constipated. Whoa, no one ever told me that. I thought pooping once a day was normal. That's enough, isn't it? It depends depends. It depends if you want to be a super vibrant, awesome, feeling, functioning, vital, enthusiastic person that ovulates and springs out of bed in the morning with just an abundance of energy. And so, step 1 to pooping more. This step actually really helps us wee more, and it's drinking water. And so, because of our dehydrating life that we live, we actually are really barren inside. And I have the opportunity of looking at x-rays pretty much on a daily basis of people when we take photos of their spine. Now, what you should see on an x-ray is hard tissue. So you should see bone. What you shouldn't see is any soft tissue. So you shouldn't see any organs. Now, what I see, especially in women, is a huge build-up within the large intestines that actually is showing up on their x-rays. So if we see any bowel pattern on the x-ray, what that means is they're constipated, and they're so constipated that it's shown up, it's impacted, and then I say, hey, how's your poop? They go, oh, I poop every day. How is your system still functioning? You must feel terrible. And so the point I'm trying to make here is your body is designed to feel so much better than what you currently are, right here, right now. Your body is designed to feel awesome. So step 1 of pooping more water. And so 3 litres minimum. We use and lose 3 litres just by waking up. Step 2 of pooping more is actually giving yourself some time. And so we live in this crazy world where everybody and everything is due yesterday, and we don't actually stop. And so this is a big one that I see with women who have actually stopped having their period, and they're going through menopause. And so menopause within the body is actually a process where the hormones start to do a little bit of this and then they kind of drop off. Now when they're doing this, it really overloads the liver, because the liver is the thing that processes our hormones. Now your liver dumps into your bowels, and so if there is an overload in the liver because there's an overload in the bowel, you better believe at 2 a.m. that blanket is being thrown off and the hair's coming back. Oh my God, it's so hot. And then all of a sudden, and then it'll happen again. And this is not a normal sign of going through menopause. This is a sign that your liver is overloaded and that your bowels aren't pooping. So step 1 to poop more, water. Step 2 to poop more is actually giving yourself time. And so what I mean by that is after each meal, go and spend 5 to 10 minutes on the loo. And you're like, 5 to 10 minutes, 3 times a day, that's 15 minutes to half an hour. Take your phone, do some emails, read a book, have a moment to yourself. And after time, you won't actually have to spend that time because your body will get the idea that this is a normal process. Now, going to the toilet and pooping should take about 10 seconds, and you pretty much should have a clean wipe. And so if you're wiping and you're continuously wiping, there is some toxin buildup that's trying to come out that kind of got cut off halfway. So your process of pooping is important. And so if you're pooping and you've got to wipe a bunch, or if you're pooping and you have to sit there for 15 minutes, this is really cool, because it means that really shortly, if you follow the principles of drinking 3 litres of water, spending time now, so maybe in a month you'll go to the loo just like that. And the other thing that I want to address here is pooping in our society has become kind of like a thing that periods are. We just kind of do it, we don't really talk about it, but it's so important that it's less taboo. We want to make poo less taboo. Oh, I can't go at work because she might hear me next door, or I can't go at work because they'll know that I've left for 15 minutes and that's how long it takes me. Or I can't go at his house, or I can't go in a public bathroom. These are all things that in time when your poop takes 10 seconds and you have a clean wipe and it doesn't really smell because we've started to look at some diet stuff, it won't be a problem. The third way to poop more is actually position. So I didn't put a photo of this up, but we have this right angle muscle that loops around our bowels in the lower part of our digestive system. And that loop actually is awesome because it stops us pooping in our pants when we're standing and when we're sitting. And so when we're standing, it's like this. When we're sitting like you are, it's like this. So in order to poo, what needs to happen is your poo has to, which is just kind of come along, it has to come around this corner, and it struggles because it's not meant to have to poo around a corner. It's meant to be able to poo like this. And so how do we get that muscle relaxed so our poo can just fall out? Well, it's position. And has anyone ever been to any of the developing countries and seen their squat toilets? Yeah? And so squatting is how we're meant to poo. Because when we squat, no longer do we have this right angle, we actually have this slippery dip so we can have a mudslide explosion come out. And so you don't need to go and install a new toilet within your home, but what you could do is pull over a bucket or maybe the pile of toilet paper that you bought when you were scared about it. Or maybe you could pull over the bin and put your feet up so your knees are actually coming up towards your chest. And when you spend time there, your poop has no excuse. If you're hydrated, if you're giving it some moments, it will come. And it might not come for the first 2 weeks because for 10, 20, 30, 50 years time, you've held it in. So you've got to give it a little bit of a moment to start to get the idea that when the prison guards go away, the prisoners will come out to play. Yeah? Okay. How to poop more. So, this is what I almost... yes. So disease within the system, and we're kind of tracking back a little bit. So disease is a summary of what you eat, what you drink, what you think, but most importantly, what you don't eliminate. So if you're not pooping, if you're not sweating, and so sweating, I mean getting out there and doing a little bit of exercise, it's so normal to sweat. And when I say sweat, I mean from every area of your body. If you're using deodorant, that's good, make sure it doesn't have aluminium. If you're using an antiperspirant, let's break that word down. Anti meaning stop, perspirant meaning perspiration. What that does is actually stops you from sweating. And when that happens, what happens? It goes in. And so our huge rise in breast cancer came about the same time of the invention of bras and the invention of antiperspirants. And so what we want to do is let it sweat. Now over time, what will happen is your body will regulate and you won't be as stinky. In the beginning you'll be a little bit stinky. Bear with it, wear loose fitting shirts, roll on the deodorant. Your body will thank you for it, so will your boobs. Right, that is sweat. We had a look. I really hope your wee doesn't look like the guy here with the circle at the top. It should be super clear. And breath. Something else that we don't do and that we can do when we stop and menstruate and stop and ovulate and stop and have our luteal phase is actually breathe. We don't breathe, we shallow breathe. We do this, I see it so much in practice, and this is our next generation. So where is the breath coming from? It's not. There is no depth of breath. There is no belly breathing that's happening because we do this. And what does that do? That gives you a belly. And that slows the breath and it allows us only to breathe really shallowly. But if we start to lift and we start to open our chest and open up to a more powerful position, all of a sudden our bowels have more breath. And as we breathe in, what happens is this diaphragm, so our big breathing muscle, actually massages all of our tummy. And the massaging of the tummy helps the liver to secrete those extra hormones into the bowel, helps the bowel start to move the food around, and it helps us to poop. Who knew? So breath is a really important part of our detox. And so these are our ways. Now the next thing that I know you're all here and all have been waiting for is, do men get their periods? And so the man's menstrual cycle. The answer is a really interesting one. So women track on the moon phase, so the lunar cycle. So we're in cycle with that big, beautiful, feminine moon that hangs up in our sky. The men actually, they're in tune with the solar cycle. So they don't go through a monthly cycle like us, but they go through a daily cycle. And so we'll cover this quickly because I know we're very close to the end here. This is the last little point that I want to chat to you about. So the man, their daily solar cycle, and it is based off cortisone and testosterone and a little bit of growth hormone. And so when the man wakes up, they are at their peak testosterone. And so around that 7 to 8 o'clock, let's just assume they're not on night shifts and we don't live in Whyalla. So around 7 to 8 o'clock will be their biggest peak in testosterone. And when a man is in this peak of testosterone, they are at their most powerful. They will be abundant with energy. They don't want to take directions. They just want to get out there and get it done. Their most able time to problem solve is in this particular morning phase of their cycle. If they stub their toe, they are going to be angry because they have testosterone rolling through their system in comparison to a little later in the day when they stub their toe and their estrogen, although it's only a little bit. So estrogen is our female hormone. When that rises a little bit, they stub their toe and go, "Ow, that hurt," as opposed to using that overarching dominant man energy. And so morning phase is when they're at their peak. You might have experienced the morning wood. This is when they want it. So this is a part of their daily cycle. And from here, what will happen is over the day, it'll start to slowly wane. And at about lunchtime is a really, really good time to have a chat, to ask different things of your man. In the evening, if you want something done, best time to ask, because his testosterone is at his lowest. He's in his more logical mind. Catch him before he gets too tired. And so if we think about the solar cycle of sleep and wake, and we look at our modern world and how our jobs and careers are set up, do you notice a bit of a trend? Do we wake up and get to work by 9 when we've got our highest dose of testosterone? Do we go through and do we stop around the point where we're at our lowest energy between 3 and 4? Do we then get to rinse and repeat and do it all again tomorrow? Is this a feminine world that we've built, or is this a masculine world that we've built our careers around? It's self-explanatory, right? And so what I really encourage you to do is to look at your cycle and look at when you are going through these ovulation, menstruation, luteal and follicular cycles, and schedule your life and all the important stuff in that first 14 days post-period. And then don't do hard stuff in the last 14 days, because that's when it's rough. If we try to put on our masculine energy and get out there when we're not feeling awesome, that's when we get run down. That's when we're not abundant in all of the good stuff that womanhood gives us. So tonight, basically my goal was for you to understand that as a woman you are so powerful, and we just need to tap in and harness the energy that is our God-given right to wake up in the morning when we're ovulating and go and get those, whatever you want to be, whether it be tits if you're living in the Northern Hemisphere, or go and just grab life by the ovaries and have a really good time. And so if you can tap in and harness your feminine power, it's something that you won't regret. It's something that you'll have heaps of fun doing. Go home and have a chat to the people in your family about the fact that for the first little while, throughout your phase, you're going to be awesome, and for the last little while, to leave you alone. So thanks everybody for coming. Before I let you go, I will remind you that Emma's got the reusable pads and cups, and there are some probiotics that I've brought down the back. The probiotics down there are really good if you're super constipated, so that's something that you can have a little look at. So thanks everybody, I hope you had a good time, and we'll see you around.